So what are the 5 best foods that you can eat for brain health?
So I have them almost every day. Salmon, especially wild salmon for the omega-3 fatty acids, berries, but they have to be organic. That's very important. So I'm a huge fan of blueberries. I often call them brain berries, but it's critical that they're organic. So people take blueberry extract. Actually, it's been shown to improve memory.
Okay.
Nuts and seeds. People who eat nuts and seeds on a regular basis have a lower incidence of depression and dementia. Leafy greens for the fiber and the magnesium, but my favorite one is raw cacao, or the main ingredient in chocolate. I don't say chocolate because chocolate's filled with sugar and dairy and a lot of things that are really bad for you. But as a bonus, I want you to try this. I make brain healthy hot chocolate virtually every day.
How do you make it?
And so I get raw cacao. So for each serving, say the serving's like 12 ounces, a heaping teaspoon of raw cacao, unsweetened organic almond milk. And you could do it with other nut milks, but I like almond milk. And there's a company called Sweetleaf that makes liquid chocolate stevia. And so I heat up the milk, I mix in the raw cacao, I put a couple of dropperfuls of chocolate stevia and put it in a blender. It tastes amazing. And it's part of the ritual I have for happiness in my life and this is a very important point. I only eat things I love that love me back. I mean, I don't know if you've ever been in a bad relationship. I have. I'm not doing it anymore. I'm like married to my best friend, and I'm damn sure not doing it with food. I am not going to be in, because people go, oh, I love Rocky Road ice cream. Well, it beats you up. Or I love beer. Well, it shrinks your brain. And I'm like, no. Do I love it like I love my brain healthy hot chocolate? And it loves me back. So whatever you eat or whatever you do, I mean, we're in a relationship with what we eat and what we do. And is it a mutually positive relationship or is it destructive?
See, I love that there was an ambulance driving by in the background as my and our brain doctor were telling us to make hot chocolate. That was just a beautiful thing. I think that was the universe telling us all, we need to have our brain healthy cacao with the stevia chocolate sweetener. I'm actually going to make one when we are done with this. What can we do to improve our memory, Dr. Amen?
Well, improve your brain. It's like the most important thing. It's 50%. I mean, think about this, Mel. 50% of people 85 and older will be diagnosed with dementia. Like those are odds I am not okay with. And if you want to keep your brain healthy or rescue it, you have to prevent or treat the 11 major risk factors that steal your mind. And I know we don't have time to go in it, but the mnemonic I have is bright mind. So for example, maybe the most important thing, B, is for blood flow. Whatever you can do to increase blood flow to your brain, you're going to be happier, your memory is going to be better, and you're going to be more sexual. Because whatever is good for your brain, good for your heart, is good for your genitals.
So is that the brisk walking?
So you want to avoid things that steal blood flow, caffeine, nicotine, being sedentary, having any form of heart disease. And then you want to do things that enhance blood flow. So walking, raw cacao, beets, the supplement ginkgo. These things all increase blood flow. Cinnamon, oregano.
Wow. Okay. I want to hear the R though. Bright mind. I know that there's 11, but give me 2 or 3 of them.
The R is retirement and aging. When you stop learning, your brain starts dying. So constantly engage in new learning. The I is inflammation. But the one maybe to talk about more is the T. It's toxins. And we live in a toxic society, right? Here I am in Florida. I just talked about all the fish off the coast in Florida. On average, they have 7 pharmaceuticals in their tissues. But just the products you put on your body, I have all of my patients download the app Think Dirty. It allows you to scan all of your personal products, and it'll tell you on a scale of 1 to 10 how quickly they're killing you.
Oh my God.
We saw this year that the FDA took off a number of sunscreens off the market because they were associated with cancer. How horrifying is that, right? You're thinking you're protecting yourself from cancer. The toxic products are giving you cancer. So Think Dirty, but also we have to stop thinking of alcohol as a health food. It's not, it's toxic to your brain. Or marijuana is innocuous. It's not, it damages your brain. And, you know, it's these little lies in our society that is really promoting the disease we are just flooded with.
So you've been a psychiatrist for 40 years. What are 5 things you'd never do because it's bad for your mental health and your brain health?
Well, I never believe every stupid thing I think. And I think that's really important to know, you know, I'm going to get these crazy, stupid, awful thoughts, and I know how to manage and dismiss them. I would never say everything I think. Some people come to me and say, oh, Dr. Amen, I'm brutally honest. And I'm like, well, that's usually not helpful. Relationships require not. I would never purposefully stay up late and screw up my sleep. I would never eat everything I want. And I would never take medicine just based on symptom clusters. Like, you know, I'm depressed, so take an antidepressant. So I think that's all insane. I always want to look at the brain and then target whatever treatment I need to how somebody's brain's functioning.
Yeah, the one thing I forgot to ask you, because, you know, right now, as you and I are talking, we've just turned the clocks back. But this time of year, when it gets darker earlier and it's colder, I notice like my mood drops and I feel like sad. What do you do, whether it's because of the time of year or because of chronic stress? You feel this sort of languishing or heaviness set in. What are 3 things that you would recommend that somebody do to boost their mood?
So morning bright light, I think that can be really helpful. So, you know, a bright light therapy lamp for 20 or 30 minutes in the morning, exercise, don't overdo the caffeine. And it's really important, we haven't talked about this yet, turn off blue light when the sun goes down. So
what is blue light?
Constantly flooded with blue light. And in the morning, it's fine, but after dark, it's not, because it decreases the production of melatonin. So you get it from your laptop, or you get it from your phone, or you get it from whatever gadgets you might be looking at. And so after dark, either put blue light blockers on your gadgets or just turn them off and go read a book.
Okay, great. And, you know, I also didn't ask you this. How do you know if your dopamine levels are low?
If you're tired, if you're unmotivated, if you can't concentrate, and you find yourself more impulsive than is good for you.
And finally, let's bottom line, because you are the master at elite brain training. If you could leave everyone with just one thing that you would like them to start doing today to create better brain health, what would it be?
It's that mother tiny habit. It's whenever you come to a decision point in your day, just ask yourself, am what I'm doing good for my brain or bad for it? And if you can answer that with information and love, I mean, I'm serious about this, love of yourself, love of your family, love of the reason you're on earth, you're going to start making good decisions for your brain, and then everything in your life will be better.
You're getting a private session with one of the world's leading brain coaches. And I want you to get ready, because in Jim's book, Limitless, he gives a ton of tips on reading faster, many of which I'd never heard before. So Jim, what are they?
Here are a couple of tips that could really help listeners not only read faster, but improve their focus and their retention and understanding of the information. Because if you ever read a page in a book and just forgot what you just read, and you had to reread it, and then you still forgot what you just read, this could really help. So the first thing is, we all have books on our shelf we haven't read yet, right? And the goal is, when you pick up the book, if you use a visual pacer when you read, you'll read it faster. And now, what's a visual pacer? It could be your finger, it could be a pen, it could be a highlighter, it could be a mouse on a computer. And what you're doing is, you're not touching the page or the screen, you're just going right above it and just underlining what you're reading. Now, I want you to not just believe everything I'm saying, you could test it out also. When we're done with this episode, pick up a book that you're reading, put a mark in the margin where you're left off. And what I want you to do is set your phone, your timer, to go off in 60 seconds. So we're going to read for 60 seconds. And I want you to read how you would normally read, not using your finger, but just how you would normally read for comprehension. And then at the end of 60 seconds, I want you to put a mark in the margin where you left off. And then count the number of lines that you just read. And that's the lines per minute. Now, set the timer again for another 60 seconds, and then pick up where you left off, but this time just underline the words. And you're just underlining the words as you would read. And then at the end of 60 seconds, put a mark in the margin, and then count the number of lines you just read. For the majority of the listeners, they'll find that second number will be 25 to almost 50% greater. And you don't have to work any harder. So it's not about working harder, it's about working more intelligently, right? And so the reason why it works is, number one of the challenges we have when we read is we backskip.
Backskip? What is backskip? What does that even mean, Jim?
We reread words.
Oh.
And this keeps you from doing that. Some people reread whole lines, right? On the other side of it, your eyes are attracted to motion. So if something ran across your room, you wouldn't look at me, you would look at what moves. Because as a hunter-gatherer, your eyes are trained to look at movement. Because if you're in a bush and you're hunting lunch, let's say it's a rabbit or a carrot, depending on your diet, if the bush next to you moves, you have to look. Because number one, it could be lunch, or number two, you could be lunch. So when your finger is going across the page, it draws your attention through, as opposed to your attention being outside of you. And then the final reason, use your finger while you read, it's kind of interesting. Kids use their finger while they read naturally, organically, until we tell them not to. And you do also, because when I ask people to count the number of lines, maybe they didn't use their finger when they initially read, but if I ask you to count the number of lines, what do? Use your finger as a visual aid to help you to focus. But the final reason is your certain senses work very closely together. For example, have you ever had a great tasting fruit right from the farmer's market, but you're not actually tasting a peach, you're smelling the peach, but your sense of smell and taste are so closely linked, your mind can't tell the difference. It can tell the difference when you're sick, when you can't breathe out of your nose. What does food taste like? It tastes more bland, right? And so just as your sense of smell and taste are closely linked, so is your sense of sight and your sense of touch. That when you use your finger while you read, people will say they literally feel more in touch with their reading.
Seriously? This one tool, just using a visual cue or pacer or whatever you called it, can increase your reading speed by 50%. Is that really true?
Absolutely. 25, 50%. Some of the listeners doing this exercise will actually double their reading speed. And think about it, the value of that. The average person spends about 4 hours a day processing information. You think about social media and emails and books and reports and research, whatever you have to go through, the newspaper. If you could just cut that in half, you double your reading speed. So you save 2 hours a day. What's 2 hours a day over the course of a year? In fact, what's just 1 hour a day saved over the course of a year? 365 hours. How many 40-hour work weeks is that? Over 9? Over 9 weeks of productivity you gain back, you reclaim. 2 months of productivity is back of yours, saving into something ubiquitous like reading.
You know what I really love about this, Jim, is that you don't have to try harder. What you just taught us is a skill that will help us read 50% faster just by using the tip of a pen and leveraging the super wiring of how our eyes are wired to track to movement. That's incredible. So let's jump into the next skill, which is, what is your technique for always remembering people's names?
Yeah, so name is very important. I always say, remember mom. This is just, there are a couple dozen examples in the book and techniques, but remember name. A name, as they say, is the sweetest sound to a person's ears. It's probably the number one networking business etiquette skill, because how are you going to show somebody you care for their future, their health, their family, whatever you have to offer if you don't care enough to just remember them, right? Maya Angelou say, people will forget what you say, they'll forget what you did, but they'll always remember how you made them feel.
Yes.
And that's so important to remember names. MOM. Of course, it's an acronym because I'm doing this short form and podcast form. The first M is motivation, meaning having that purpose. A lot of people won't remember names because they haven't touched the reason. So if you ask yourself, simple thing you could do before you meet somebody, ask yourself, why do I want to remember this person's name? Just get in the habit of doing that. Maybe it's just to show the person some respect. Maybe it's to make a connection. Maybe it's make a new friend or get a referral, make a sale. If you don't have a reason, you won't get the result. If you come up with a reason. So for example, if there was a suitcase, like most people say, I'm horrible at remember names, but I challenge people on their BS, right? Their belief systems. If there was a suitcase, if Mel and I had a suitcase of $1 million cash, tax-free, if you just remember the name of the next stranger you meet, who's going to remember that name? Everybody, right? Everybody will. So as a coach, I'm going to call people on their BS, right? Their belief systems. It had nothing to do with your capabilities. You can remember names. Are you motivated to remember that name, right? And one of the ways to do it is to ask a question and tune into why.
Okay, so to remember names, you have to remember mom. And the M stands for motivation. Got that. Why are you motivated to remember their name? That makes sense. What does the O stand for?
The O in mom, this is big, is observation. A lot of people aren't forgetting the name. They're just not paying attention. Ooh. The art of memory is the art of attention. Like I remember years ago, I got to go to this fundraiser, and it was 2,000 people. We're sitting at the table. I'm the first one there. And after that, another person, Forrest Whitaker, the Oscar winner, sits right next to me. And then Richard Branson sits right next to him. And then Ashton Kutcher and Ashton Kutcher's twin brother, who I didn't know he had a twin brother, sits there. And then President Clinton sits right next to me. Now, I had met him a few years before, very briefly. And when he saw him at the table, he called me by name. He said, hello, by name. And I was like, wow, that's pretty impressive, because I'm sure he meets a lot of people. And then I was like, oh, okay, he knew who he was sitting with, right? Obviously. And then I swear he picks up on the conversation that we had 3 years before, and nobody was privy to that. And I was like, I'm a memory guy, right? I need to know how you're doing this. And he tells me the story of his grandfather in Arkansas in the living room, and he would tell stories, but afterwards to kids, he would quiz each of the kids to see if they were paying attention. Now, when he's explaining this to me, I also noticed at a meta level, I was like, wow, I feel like I'm the only one in this room, because the way he's communicating with me, it's like there are a lot more important people in that room, especially at that table. And yet I feel like he's not looking over my shoulder or seeing who else is important. And I realized, politics aside, people would say he's a great communicator, a great connector, a great charisma, and he's got an incredible memory and his powerful presence. And I think, Mel, his incredible memory and his powerful presence comes from being powerfully present. That his incredible memory and his powerful presence with people comes from being powerfully present with people, right? Because most people, they're not forgetting the name. They're just not even hearing the name. Why? Because they're looking around or they're thinking about how to respond. They're waiting for their turn to speak. And so an easy way to remember names, listen. And even if you want to do a brain exercise, think about the word listen and scramble the letters, and it spells another word perfectly. It spells the word silent. And so just be there and listen.
I love that, because being truly present when you're with someone will help you make them feel like they're the only one in the room. And you just taught us that incredible memory comes from being powerfully present. And so when you're sitting there and you're present and you're silent and you're taking in what the heck they're saying, you're also going to remember what they're saying. That's so cool. So what is the last M in mom?
The last M are the methods, right? And here's the quick method, suave. When next time you're at an event and you want to say, I'm going to remember names. I'm more conscious of it because I listened to that episode.
Right.
Look at yourself and say, I'm going to be suave. The S, say the name right away. When somebody gives you their name, greet them back using their name, because it means you get to hear it twice. And also, it means you don't want to have a 20-minute conversation with somebody, like say there's a lot of background noise, 20-minute conversation with Ted and say goodbye, Ed, right? You want to be corrected up front.
I like the fact that you say the name immediately, because even if you say it wrong, they'll correct you and they're not going to be offended, because if you say it immediately, it's just that you heard it wrong. It's not that you didn't remember it. And also, if you notice, well, so keep going.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So you say the name, then you use it 3 or 4 times in the conversation. And then the A in suave, ask. This works really well for people who have unusual names or names you haven't heard of before. What can you ask about a person's name?
How do you say your name?
How do you say your name? How do you spell your name? Where is it from? Who were you named after? Does it mean something in another language, right? So everyone's favorite topic is their name. Actually, when you're talking about the reticular activating system, which is gears your focus by asking questions, because our brain is mostly deleting information, the name is up on top, because think about it, it's probably one of the first words you heard, probably one of the first words you learned how to write. And think about all the encouragement, the emotional, like, wow, congrats. Like, so it's one of the reasons why it's the sweetest sound. But ask about a person's name, they'll be flattered, especially unusual names.
Okay, I just want to make sure that as you're listening to Jim, you picked up on the fact that he has this acronym SWAV. And SWAV is what we're using as the tool to help us remember someone's name. You said it kind of fast, Jim, so I'm just kind of slowing it down for those of us who may not be as quick in the super brain as you are. The S is for say it. Got that? Makes sense. Say it as soon as they say their name. U is for use it, which also makes sense, because the more you use it in a sentence without being creepy, the more you're likely to remember it. A, ask about it. What does the V in SWAV stand for?
The V in SWAV is visualize. And this is how I do it in front of audiences. If there's time on stage, I'll have 30, 40, 50 people stand up, pass around a microphone, and I'll memorize, upwards of 100 names, depending on how much time we have. But how I do it is I would just visualize the person's name, meaning most people listening are better with faces than they are with names. Yes. Right? You go to someone and say, I remember your face, but I'm sorry, I forgot your name. You never go to someone and say, I remember the opposite. I remember your name, but I forgot your face, right? That doesn't happen. True. But your visual cortex takes up more real estate. And so we tend to remember what we see. And if we tend to remember what we see, try seeing what we want to remember. You meet someone for the first time and their name is Mary. Imagine for a split second that she's carrying 2 lambs underneath her arms. Mary had a little lamb, right? You meet someone named David, just hit him in the nose with a slingshot. It's David and Goliath, right? And people say, that's so childish, but that helps you to remember it. Because if you could see it, feel it, and hear it, you're not going to forget it.
Got it.
Right?
Okay.
So you're hearing it, you're visualizing it, and you're making it kind of funny or ludicrous, and then you're not going to forget it. So a person's name is Mike. Imagine they jump on a table and sing on a microphone. And when you say goodbye to them, you're going to remember, oh, that was the guy that did that. What's his name? Mike. Right? So a person's name is John. You could, picture whatever you picture, right? and then finally, the E in SWAV stands for end. End the conversation saying goodbye using their name. Because if you could walk into a room of strangers and leave saying, let's say 20 people, and leave saying goodbye to every single one of them, who are they all going to remember? you, right? And that's an absolute standout skill.
Jim, I hate to say this. We got to take one last break. And the reason why I hate to say it is I don't know about you listening, but I'm starting to feel like my brain feeling a little bit more super. Aren't you feeling a little bit more super in your brain? Like I've got some mad skills that I didn't know about. And guess what? Jim Quick, he's not done because he's got this super crazy cool trick. So you will never forget where you put your wallet or your keys or anything for that matter. And that's not all. Jim is also going to cover the 10 things that you need to eat, think, and do in order to have a super brain. And he's going to reveal, finally, that secret to how the heck he can remember 200 names forward and backwards. And he's going to do it for you in real time coming next. Stay with us. Welcome back. It's your friend Mel. I am thrilled that you are here because we're about to dive into the 10 things that you need to eat, think, and do in order to have a super brain. But first, I almost forgot the thing I really want to learn, which is how do I remember where I put my keys?
Yeah. So it's always the key to, I can't believe I said the key. There are 3 keys to remembering your keys, right? For all memory is you encode, you store, and you retrieve, right? The hard part is the retrieval because if you didn't encode it well or store it somewhere, it's going to be hard to get it back out and recall it. So encoding you do by seeing it and feeling it. The more senses you use, the more likely you're to remember it. Taking a split second, and it only takes a split second to make something ordinary and turn it extraordinary, that's what makes it memorable, right?
Definitely.
And we only went through it once. Right? So you don't have to repeat it over. You don't have to say, my car keys are here 15 times. But what all I would do is you need the locus of attention. You need to fine tune your concentration. So let's say you put your keys somewhere, you have to be mindful of it or you're not going to remember it.
That's
right?
true.
So it takes a little bit of effort. The good news doesn't take much. It takes a split second. So if you took your keys and then just threw it on the desk, just for a split second, imagine the desk explodes. Right? And then it's like, boom. Like that's like, you can't forget that, is to make it extraordinary. For the things you want to remember, like the periodic table is pretty ordinary, right? But if I taught people how to visualize that and add emotion and turn it into a story, we teach kids like 8-year-old to memorize the whole periodic table in like minutes. It's insane when you could see it, feel it, and hear it. Even languages, if I did something with counting to 10 in Japanese for everybody here, and you don't have to do this on video, but let's say people want to learn that language, like do this, Mel, just scratch your knee and say itchy knee.
Itchy knee.
That's 1 and 2. Itchy is 1, knee is 2. Knee. San is sun, like sun. So point to the light up above. San. So it's not sun, but san. And then she. So point to a female in the room. She, right? So itchy ni, san, shi. That's 1, 2, 3, 4.
Itchy ni,
right?
san, shi. Holy cow.
And then 5 is go. So if you just pretend and say go. You're walking. I'm on video. I'm moving my hands and my feet. Go. That's 5. And then 6 is roku. So imagine you're rowing a canoe.
Oh, roku. Like a canoe. Yeah, roku.
Yeah, roku. And then you have, so that's
pretty cool,
6
dude.
right
like
there.
you're
And so you
literally
could even
like
literally
making
go to
my
10.
brain better. Like as we're talking.
Yeah. So there's so many things. My point with this whole thing is so many of us shrink what's possible to fit our minds when we could expand our minds to fit all that's possible. So regardless of who's listening to this, their age and their background, age or stage of life, everybody can improve. It's just, you just need the correct lessons and a coach. And, our brains, I want people, Mel, to know their brains, right? Know more about their brains. I want them to trust their brains. I want them to love their brains. And I want people to use their brains because it's the greatest gift that we have. And great things begin on the inside. And people who are listening right now, they've self-selected. They have greatness inside of them, and they have genius inside of them. And now is the perfect time to let it out.
Wow. Well, I feel like I should go roku, she, sun, niche, like that. I just counted 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 backwards. So... And you just taught me how.
Like learning doesn't have to be this, like sit quietly by yourselves and just study and repeat things. Like who wants to do that?
Not me.
Who has the time to do it or the inclination to do that?
Well, guess what, Jim? Now that we have you as our brain coach, we don't have to, because you have all the methods to help us be limitless in our lives, in our thinking, and in the way that we learn.
You know, the thing is, first understand that food creates mood.
Food creates mood.
So we're always trying to find out ways to make ourselves happier,
Right.
think more clearly, be more satisfied, right? And so that's why I got so interested in this work, because with my background in nutrition and being a doctor, I thought, well, if we can control our mood through food and the actions that we take on a daily basis, why aren't we talking about this? Why isn't this first-line therapy? There's really good research, a new study from South Australia, that the combination of diet and exercise was 1.5 times more effective for depression than the leading medications.
Now explain why, because that's a big research result, that just through food and exercise, it was found to be 1.5 times more effective than medication alone.
And if you think about it, they actually even put therapy and medications, kind of the traditional treatment, into one category.
Okay.
And they compared that with changing your diet, with changing your sleep, your exercise, lifestyle habits.
Okay.
And they said, we should be prescribing this as first-line therapy for depression. There's an anxiety, multiple anxiety studies, ADHD. I mean, we are missing the boat. Obviously, we're not doing something right, because depression is skyrocketing. So is anxiety. So is obesity. So is diabetes. So is cardiovascular disease. So the status quo is not working. So why not employ these techniques and put them at the forefront? So things like we talked about already and that are in the book are teaching you that we have control, that yes, do all the things, but also change the way you eat, change the way you exercise, get more sunlight.
Well, you might be depressed and anxious and struggling with a lot of stuff because of what you're eating.
Yes.
And because of your lifestyle right now. And so I think it's really great news to hear that you can feel better if you start to eat better. And that this whole cycle that you are trapped in terms of the cravings that never end and the cycle of emotional eating and feeling lethargic and feeling anxious, that you can, based on the research and based on the work that you do with patients around the world, that when you take your food intake seriously, you can profoundly change your mood, you can change your body, you can change your lifestyle, all of it. But it begins with the food. So let's talk about because you say in the beginning of the book that there are certain types of food that you can eat to balance dopamine naturally. What are those foods?
Yeah, so you want to be eating foods that are high in the amino acid tyrosine. Tyrosine is the precursor for L-DOPA in the brain, and then L-DOPA gets converted to dopamine. So that's how we have dopamine. So in the past, it was thought, well, you can't really do anything to boost the dopamine levels in your brain. Like food has no connection. It's down here. The brain is up here.
Right.
So everyone used to say, well, it doesn't really matter. It's just about calories, But now we know that eating more foods, doing more things like getting sunlight, exercise, and certain foods that are high in tyrosine can help boost your dopamine.
Wow. What are some of those foods?
So one of them is dairy foods. So tyrosine is an amino acid, so high protein foods. So dairy, soy, nuts, cherries are all things. I have a huge list of, because you might not like cherries. You might not like, might not tolerate dairy.
Right.
But you could do soy and you could do. And so you can eat these things. So what I would suggest is, say you're having a breakfast in the morning. Mm-hmm. You want to boost dopamine. Dopamine is very closely related to epinephrine, norepinephrine and epinephrine, which is adrenaline. So in the morning, you want to feel awake, alert, and motivated. You want to eat things with higher dopamine that are going to boost your dopamine.
So give me an example of what
So
would be a
I
great
would-
thing to eat for breakfast.
So I love cottage cheese.
Okay.
Okay, I know cottage cheese is controversial. You could
Why
do
is-
yogurt instead.
Who's mad at cottage cheese?
Some people, I mean, cottage cheese is having a moment on
It
social
is?
media.
Like, as in it's bad?
No, people either love it or hate it. It's
Okay.
a divisive food because of the texture of it. And so I love it, but some people
People
don't.
need better hobbies if they're arguing about cottage cheese online.
It is. But it's having a moment, thankfully. And there's the cottage cheese ice cream. There's all these cottage cheese.
Cottage cheese ice cream?
Yes, it's all the rage. It's viral.
What?
You blend the cottage cheese with a little bit of sweetener and fruit, and then put it and freeze it, and then you scoop it out like ice cream.
Wow.
Yeah,
Is it any good?
it's delicious.
Okay. Who knew? Cottage cheese.
And you
it's
can
like it's the new cauliflower.
It's the new cauliflower.
It could be a pizza if it wanted.
It can turn into anything. So cottage cheese in the morning with fruit and nuts.
Okay.
And you have got yourself a high dopamine breakfast.
Wow. Okay.
And-
you also say there's 6 ways that you can boost serotonin naturally.
So serotonin is kind of the calm, chill
Yep.
happiness hormone. And so that's a nice one to do maybe in the evening.
Okay.
Because you want to say, hey, I want to boost. So tryptophan is the amino acid, as you might have heard of tryptophan because of turkey.
Yeah.
But it's also ever present in eggs. It's in also dairy food, lean meats, fish. And the way you can actually really get your zen feeling from
Yeah.
that is pair it with a complex carbohydrate. So sweet potato or squash or quinoa, and have the protein and the carbohydrate. And it gets you this nice burst of dopamine, serotonin. So serotonin is really good for people for obviously mood, but also for sleep, because serotonin is very close to melatonin.
Huh.
And those people who struggle with nighttime awakenings should try the serotonin boosting foods in the evening.
How do you figure out what's going on? You have in your new book, Young Forever, you have all of these self-assessments that you can do.
Yeah.
But do you have to have testing at some point, or is there a way for you to
get testing?
have an accessible way?
Yeah.
Because a lot of, like, one of the things, I agree with you. I agree with you that our medical approach and the medical system is about treating illness versus
sure.
keeping you healthy and whole. I agree that we treat symptoms, but we have a hard time getting to the root cause.
I agree. So,
So I just want to, like, because I know that what's going to happen with this conversation, Dr. Hyman, is that we are going to activate anyone listening to absolutely take the next 10 days of your life and see what happens when you reset your diet and you remove a few things. Absolutely add in those simple supplements that cost you less than $1 a day, and you are worth that investment in yourself, and see what happens. Absolutely take the steps to lower your stress and tap into your body's ability to reset, like even just the 5 deep breaths a day that activate the and tone the vagus nerve. But if somebody's going, I want to learn more, what is the next right step?
That's a great question. And you know, one of the challenges I've always had with medicine is it's kind of a secret guild, and doctors hold the reins. They can order the tests or they can't. They will give you the results or they won't. They'll help you interpret them or they won't. And so you're at the sort of whim and mercy of whoever you're seeing. And most doctors do a good job and want to help people, but it kind of kept in a guild. So in the book, Young Forever, I do have really extensive questionnaires that allow you to figure out almost 80% of what's going on.
Yep.
And then depending on what you find in those, you can kind of follow up with different kinds of testing. But because of this problem, exactly that you're talking about, I decided to co-found a company with a good friend called Function Health, which allows you, without a doctor's order, to go to any Quest lab in the country, and there's thousands of them, get a blood draw of over 100 biomarkers that normally cost $15,000 for $500.
Wow.
And it comes with a whole interpretive map and framework and dashboard that's filtered through the lens of functional medicine that I wrote that allows people to not have to go see the doctor and still do 80% of or
Why the hell
90%.
did I go to your clinic then if I could have just done this, Dr. Hyman? Bearing the lead. No, I'm just kidding. I am just kidding, everybody. I do want to say something that I was able to go to the medical center right here in this tiny town of Manchester, Vermont, and have blood drawn for those tests.
Yeah, right.
And so you don't have to go to your primary care. You don't have to go. All of the minute clinics that are popping up are places where you can go if you're going to do those things to order the blood draws.
Well, the thing is, you have to usually get a doctor's order. So the beautiful thing about Function Health, this company that we created, was that you don't need a doctor's order. So you can go to the website, sign up, and they'll network with over 50 different states, doctors in every one, where you can just go and get kind of
the testing done.
Yeah, get the testing done, get your results, and track it over time. And you can see your hormones, your thyroid, your insulin, your like age-related markers, your brain chemistry, so much about what's going on with your body.
You know what's so cool about this, if you can afford to do it, and we'll put the link in the show notes, is it's like getting an X-ray of your insides.
Yeah.
And you've proven to us that you heal from the inside out.
Yeah. Yeah, it's absolutely true. And I'm so excited about this approach because it empowers people to be the CEO of their own health. And the reality is that, even if you go to the doctor with all these complaints, they're going to be able to, quote, manage your symptoms. I don't want to manage people's symptoms. I want people to get better. I want people to reverse these problems and not need a doctor. And the truth is, most of the things that work are not things you're going to get at a doctor's office, which is drugs and surgery. So sometimes you need them, and I use them. That's not a bad thing. But most of the problems we have don't respond very well to that. And all these things that we talk about, whether it's depression. I mean, antidepressants just suck. They don't work that well. They have all these side effects. And anxiety medications are highly addictive. I mean, they just cover over the symptoms. What if you could actually figure out why you're having the problem and fix it?
Well, I think you told us why. It's inflammation. It's a gut that's out of whack.
Mm-hmm.
It is the stressors in your life.
Mm-hmm.
It is the toxins in your environment. And not understanding that your body has this elegant design that is super intelligent and responsive and can heal itself if you are conscious and intentional about the right input.
Yeah. And that's what's exciting that's happening now in science is we're actually getting there. Like the old paradigm's dying. And in the longevity space I've been working in, and when I wrote about it Young Forever, where these scientists are now talking about what's underlying all these diseases, these 155,000 diseases, that's not what we need to be thinking about. It's these 10 underlying problems that tend to go wrong as we get older that can explain all disease. And if we treat those, we may not be able to just extend our life by 5 years by getting rid of cancer or heart disease, but by 30 or 40 years. That means living to be 120 and being in good shape. Like, I don't want to live to be 120 in a nursing home in a wheelchair. I want to be able to ride my bike, go for a horseback ride, make love. That's what I want to do when I'm 100 or 120.
Wow. I'm glad that you said that because oftentimes I hear the word longevity and I had that reaction like, well, I don't want to be rotting away in a nursing home at
exactly.
125. That sounds terrible.
It's terrible because most of what we see, Mel, in the world is abnormal aging. And we think that's normal. Oh, it's normal to become frail and decrepit and not be able to do what you want and lose function. And the truth is that most of us, our health span doesn't equal our lifespan. The last 20 years of our life.
What's the difference between health span and lifespan?
Well, health span is how many years you're healthy and can do what you want. And lifespan is how many years you're alive. So if you're fine until you're 60, then you get dementia and you're nursing home for 20 years. That's not good. So that's what you want to do is make your health span equal your lifespan. So on my last day, I want to go for a hike with my beloved. I want to come home, make a delicious dinner. I want to have a bottle of wine, probably a pint of Ben & Jerry's ice cream, and
wait a minute, that wasn't on the diet.
Who cares? I'm 120, and then I make love, and I close my eyes and drift off, and maybe take a jump in the pond.
That sounds incredible. My mother-in-law is 85 years old. She jumps out of airplanes. She walks 5 miles a day.
There you go.
She's having the time of her life. When Chris and I went alcohol free for a bit, she's like, I'm not doing that. Like I have my 1 glass of red wine a day. That's what I need. She plays cards. She prioritizes friends.
Yeah, exactly.
She is the definition of vitality at that age.
Yeah.
And she's like the Energizer Bunny. I can't imagine her running out of steam. And that's what I think you're talking about when it comes to vitality.
Yeah.
One thing we did not touch on that I know we're going to get a lot of questions on is probiotics. So you talked about microbiomes being these little bugs in your gut that help your body break apart what I hope is going to be the fuel that your body needs, not the chemicals that the big food companies have sold to you in the grocery store. So how do you reset the gut in terms of what probiotic, or is there a strain you should take, or what should you, is yogurt enough? Like tell us what to do.
The truth is, Mel, that most of what determines the health and quality of your microbiome is what you're eating.
Okay.
Right? So you need to feed your gut right. You need to tend your inner garden right. And that's not that hard to do. What is it like? It likes lots of fruits and vegetables. It likes lots of fiber. It likes probiotic foods like sauerkraut, kimchi, miso, and things like that. It likes prebiotic foods, which are like the fertilizer that feed the good bugs, things like asparagus, artichoke, plantain, jicama, the list goes on. So we can do that a lot through our diet. And to not eat gut-busting foods, things like tons of sugar, processed food, food additives, emulsifiers, chemicals, all those things damage our microbiome. And then drugs. We're on a lot of drugs, antibiotics, acid blockers, and hormones, and all these things can really screw up our gut microbiome. Like drugs like Advil and the anti-inflammatory drugs. So we have to be really smart about taking out the things that bust our gut and put in the things that heal our gut. And that's really well outlined in my book, Young Forever. But the probiotic can be a useful tool, but it's not in replacement of the diet.
So you're basically saying if you eat sugary cereal for breakfast,
You're
and then you have chicken nuggets and pizza for lunch,
Yeah.
and then you have like takeout whatever, fried whatever, popping
Badness.
one probiotic is not going to help?
Yeah, no.
Okay.
And the other thing that's really amazing is that we've learned that they like polyphenols, which are...
What is that?
I know, right? Big word. There's like 1 million molecules in colorful fruits and vegetables that are the medicine in food. And these medicines work in many ways in our body, and particularly on a lot of the longevity switches. But it turns out that these microbes in your gut like to eat them.
Oh.
Right. And so remember that weird name, Akkermansia, that I was mentioning?
I forgot it, but now I do.
But the one that produces this like natural Valium in your gut,
yeah.
that bug really likes green tea. It likes pomegranate, and it likes cranberry, and it likes all the molecules. So you have to feed them, and like you have little critters in there. You got to take care of them, and so food is the biggest solution. And yes, probiotics can help, and prebiotic supplements and fibers can help. But we really want to actually make sure we actually take care of it by eating what we need to be eating. And I had actually horrible colitis years ago from taking an antibiotic that screwed up my gut. And I cured it using a lot of these polyphenols and prebiotics. And as a result, I was mixing all this different stuff. I created like a simple solution called Gut Food, which is a powder, like a multivitamin for the gut. And it's basically what I take every day to keep my gut healthy.
Do you put it in a shake?
Yeah,
Or do you
it
stir
tastes
in a
good.
glass,
Actually, you can put it in like a water and mix it up, or you can throw it in a NutriBullet, and it's really yummy.
Wow. So you mentioned several times that you've written about what to eat. Can you tell everybody where to go to find all this? Because the show notes are going to be 10 pages long.
Anywhere
where am I
you
sending?
find Dr. Hyman, all I do is talk about food as medicine. But I've written a number of books. One is called Food, What the Heck Should I Eat? Food, What the Heck Should I Cook? And the Pegan Diet, which is kind of a spoof on the extremes of paleo and vegan. And what are the principles? And it's really an easy, digestible, almost like bathroom book where you have 20 or so principles that you can read one, and it's basically about the time it would take you to go to the bathroom at a time. And they tell you, what you should know about each category of food. What are the best vegetables? What are maybe ones you want to watch? What are the best forms of dairy? What are the best forms of meat? What are the best forms of nuts and seeds? And what you should be doing to take care of your gut or balance your hormones. So it's all in there. And I think the Pegan Diet is kind of a fun, easy way to go.
Well, and if you put it in your bathroom, you can actually mark your progress, because if you read it in the bathroom, you will know within a couple of weeks of finishing the book whether or not applying the stuff that you just learned had any material effect on your digestion, which
create a whole Instagram site about that.
Yes, exactly. You're incredible. I know that you had some issues with binge eating when you were a teenager, and so I think you'll be in a very, you're in a really important position to make a difference here. Maddie writes, I'm 19 years old and my social media feeds are filled with fitness influencers. I enjoy fitness a lot. I love the way the gym makes me feel and the reward of how my body can look, but I get too carried away with my image sometimes and let it control my day and my mood. I struggle with binge eating at night, but I haven't been diagnosed with an eating disorder. Do you have any tips for comparing myself to other people, comparing my body to other people's bodies, and even more importantly, how do I just build a better relationship with myself and my body?
That is a very deep question, and I absolutely can relate, because when I was her age, I also struggled. And I think a lot of younger women struggle. One of the things that younger women now that are up against that I didn't have and many of us didn't have is that social media has no rules. So the first thing that Maddie has to do is limit time on social media. And I mean really limit it to what is she trying to gain out of it. And this is going to take some internal fortitude, because it is addictive, and that is how these apps, which we all love, but are designed. And they allow for dopamine release, and we want to keep going back for more. I personally have a lock on my social media. I can spend 30 minutes a day on social media max until I'm locked out. And that is exactly what Maddie should do, because comparison is a kiss of death for people. We have no idea what is happening. It really, truly is about being one's best version of oneself and shifting away from the external. Again, this whole conversation hasn't been focused about the external drivers of looking good, but understanding that the better you treat yourself, we only have one body. The better an individual treats themselves from the inside, the more capable Maddie's going to be throughout her entire life. And ultimately, she's going to go through a period where, you know, each decade we compare less, right? Right now, Maddie, you're at the height of comparison. And that's true. Just also part of being a 19-year-old woman, you know, a 19-year-old girl is you are in the zone of comparison. But this is an amazing opportunity to develop some mental toughness. And what do I mean by developmental toughness? I mean having a lot of discipline to say, you know what? I am not going to go and look at those things and compare whatever it is that those people are doing. And the other thing is I'm actually going to focus on a goal that I set for myself that is not external. It shouldn't be based on external looks. It could be based on, so she said something very important. She said something about the progress in the gym.
Right.
I don't see progress in the gym. Well, what about saying you are going to do 10 dead hang pull-ups? That has nothing to do with how you look. It purely has to do with embracing the discomfort of becoming more skilled at a movement.
You know what? This actually points to the whole reason why I wanted to have you on. Because the reason why Maddie and just about everybody on the planet, particularly in that age group, has trouble with comparison is because they're focused on what they look like versus being in the gym to take care of your muscular health. Being in the gym because of the different amino acids and the way that your neurotransmitters and your thinking and your mood and your mental health are impacted. And one thing that helped me a lot, because I struggled, like everybody, with profound comparison, is if you're going to compare yourself, right? If you just have this habit of looking around and laser focusing in on the one person whose body type is exactly the opposite and genetically impossible for you to ever achieve, and then beating yourself up for the fact that you're not 11 feet tall or 3 feet tall or whatever it is that you wish that you were. If you're going to do that with one person, try for a day admiring everybody. Admire everybody in the gym. Admire the freckles on that person over there. Admire the curly hair on that person over there. Admire the monster calves that that person over there has. Admire the gap between the teeth of the other person over there. Find something that you admire that's unique about every person that you pass by, just, casually, and you'll start to notice that you can flip it from this seeking of someone looks better than training yourself to see something unique and beautiful in everybody, because we all look very different. And, I think intellectually we know this, but that's a way to start to train your mind to default in a very different way. For the person who's listening, who is in the 2/3, who are experiencing a gut issue, they love somebody who is, what is available to them if they truly take to heart everything that you are about to share today, Dr. Robin?
Not only is it possible for you to feel better in your gut, because your gut is your engine, it's possible for you to feel better in your whole body, for you to have a clearer mind and less brain fog, for you to feel less fatigued, for your immune system to work better so that you're not overreacting to things with food allergies, or you're not underreacting to things where you can't clear infection. So the gut is a thing that unites all these different organs. And that's a thing that makes me so optimistic, because unlike when you think about genetic diseases, you sort of get what you get. You don't get upset. You're dealt a bad genetic hand. But our gut is changing all the time. When we think about our gut microbiome, which I know we're going to talk a lot about, we know from a study that was published in the journal Nature in 2014, they put people on a sort of heavy, high animal protein, high fat, Atkins type diet. And then they rested them for a week and they put them on a diet that was more plant focused. And they found that within 30 hours of the food hitting the gut, things changed dramatically. The bacterial composition changed. The genetic composition changed in terms of the genes that were turned on and off. And the great thing here is you don't have to be a vegan. You don't even have to be a vegetarian. You just have to eat more plants. You have to do some basics. And in fact, the American Gut Project study from 2019 that asked the question, what do you have to do to have a super healthy microbiome? They found that the label was completely unimportant. Carnivore, omnivore, vegan, pescatarian, lacto-ovarian. It was simply the number of different plant foods people ate, with 30 or more different plant foods a week being the magic number. So you can have your porterhouse of whatever it is that you're going to have. I mean, all my vegan friends will be very upset, but from a health point of view, there are reasons to consider eating less animal protein in terms of the ethics and climate change, et cetera. But from a health point of view, you can definitely tolerate a little animal protein on the plate. You can tolerate a lot of things on the plate if you are crowding it out with enough of the healthy stuff, with some plants and some water and some movement and some of these basic things.
You just said 30 plants. So are you saying 30 different types of plants, or are there 30 like ones that are better than others? Like
30,
as the gut doctor, what should we do?
30 different plants per week. And when I say plants, you get credit for fruits, vegetables, nuts, seeds, herbs, spices, beans, whole grains, all of them.
Oh, well, if we include spices and nuts and grains like that, absolutely, you could get 30 different things. Because I would imagine the variety, is the variety also important?
The variety is important because they all contain different things. When we think of these phytochemicals, so you think eating the rainbow is always a good way to do it. So you get different things from the oranges, and you get the lycopene from the reds, and you get something else from the green. And so eating a variety, eating seasonally is another great way to do that, because you're not in the same sort of peas, carrots, broccoli, heavy rotation for, 365 days. And it doesn't have to be a lot either. I mean, you're getting enough from, a little handful of berries is plenty. You don't have to eat a whole quart of stuff.
So as the gut expert, Dr. Robin, what do you eat in a day? Will you walk us through like breakfast, lunch, and dinner?
Absolutely. I like to start off with a green smoothie in the morning. Collards, kale, spinach, celery, parsley, mint, a little bit of fruit, usually green apple, lots of lemon. I like to use unsweetened coconut water for the base. So when I drink that, it's like a liquid salad in the morning. I mean, I feel so good when I have that. So I usually have that in the morning. If I'm still hungry, I'll usually have something highish protein, maybe a little bit of smoked salmon, some eggs, or maybe a sweet potato and kale hash. I love that too.
And then what do you do for lunch?
Lunch is usually soup. Big soup person. Yeah.
Okay.
Soup. And there are a bunch that I make. My husband makes really good soup too. So it's usually split peas or lentil. Sometimes it's just a broth. I do a really basic soup that's leeks, onion, garlic, and scallion sauteed. And then I just blend it up with some broth. Delicious. Sometimes a little curry powder, depending on how I'm feeling. But that's all the good stringy, high inulin fiber that's really good for your gut microbes. So some kind of soup. Sometimes it's a heartier soup. And then dinner is usually protein, starch, veg plus salad. My husband's mostly vegan, not all the time. Special occasions, he might eat some meat. So he's usually not doing the animal, he's almost never doing the animal protein. He's usually doing lentils, brown rice, sauteed collards, and salad. And I'll have all of that, but I may have a little piece of fish or some broiled shrimp or something. But it's lots of legumes. It's lots of beans and greens, basically. And then some whole grains. Love brown rice. Eat it probably most days. Love squash, sweet potato, yams, yucca, all of that stuff.
No wonder you're glowing. This sounds absolutely amazing. So do you need to take a probiotic?
you need to eat an apple over taking a probiotic. Yeah,
Really?
this idea, and I will say for the record, there is dark chocolate happening every day for me.
Oh, thank God.
Tons of fruit and lots of dark chocolate.
Okay.
And I have been known to eat a bag of Doritos on a road trip. It has happened.
Okay, well, I knew I liked you.
Yes.
Dr. Palmer, for the last 30 years, has been researching the connection between food, sleep, exercise, and lifestyle choices and how it impacts your metabolism. And the medical community and mental health community is extraordinarily excited about the fact that you can improve your brain functioning and improve mental wellness by changing your diet, by increasing exercise and prioritizing sleep and getting yourself off of substances that are ruining your health. And so I guess I want to go backwards, because one of the other things that you said in our first conversation was that a root cause of all mental illness and brain misfiring issues is metabolism issues, metabolic issues, that anything mental, everybody, we think from the neck up. Dr. Palmer's like, go from the neck down and let's talk about what you're eating and how you're sleeping and whether or not you're exercising, because that should be part of the treatment. So when you said that ADHD tends to show up before 12, is it showing up because of metabolic reasons?
It almost certainly is.
What does that mean? Because as a busy mom, I was diagnosed late in life like most women. And I was diagnosed as a result of having my son go through the testing process because he was labeled a problem kid in 4th grade. Turns out he couldn't read. Turns out he was highly ADHD. And that made me go, oh, wait a minute. This sounds exactly like me. And then I went through testing and got a formal diagnosis, but I didn't know anything about ADHD. And so talk to the busy mom or dad or concerned aunt or uncle or teacher or caregiver who's like, wait, did he just say metabolic issues like food and exercise and sleep can be a root cause of ADHD?
Yes. There's no question that they play a profound role in our brain function, and that includes our ability to sit still, our ability to pay attention, our ability to learn and concentrate. I don't want anyone to come away from this conversation thinking that if everybody just follows a healthy diet, we will eradicate all ADHD or we will eradicate all other mental health conditions, because that's not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is that if you look at the root cause, we know this from decades of doing brain scans on people. What are those brain scans measuring? They're measuring brain metabolism. When we see brain regions that are underactive or overactive, we mean that they are underactive and overactive in terms of brain metabolism.
What does that mean, brain metabolism?
So brain metabolism is basically blood flow to brain regions that bring food and oxygen so that the cells can create energy or not. And so the simplest way to think about it is if there are brain cells that are not getting enough food and oxygen, they are not going to have enough energy, and they are more likely to malfunction or not function optimally.
So if I can attempt to translate this, you're basically saying that with an ADHD diagnosis, which means that there are parts of my brain, or perhaps your brain as you're listening, that are, quote, under functioning. I've heard it described as like the conductor in your brain that directs your focus and quiets other inputs so that you can pay attention. If my conductor with an ADHD brain is under functioning, to put it in your language, the metabolism in my brain is not getting the energy that is required to that part of my brain for the conductor to work. Is that what you're basically saying?
That is correct.
So what are stimulants doing? Like if somebody, because you go in for ADHD and typically, you get prescribed Adderall or Concerta or some other kind of stimulant, or you're told to drink a cup of coffee. I remember that being like one of the first things they said, well, just give them caffeine in the morning. I'm like, what? Why? What are those pills doing?
So stimulants are increasing a neurotransmitter called dopamine. And that dopamine is actually increasing brain metabolism in those conductor regions of your brain. So when you take a stimulant, you're taking these underactive brain regions or these conductor brain regions, and you're giving them a boost. You are stimulating them, which means stimulating their metabolism, which means giving them more energy so that they work more robustly.
So the drugs that are prescribed for ADHD are just increasing my brain metabolism?
Absolutely. But most people don't think of it that way.
I don't think about it that way.
They think about it as correcting a chemical imbalance.
That's exactly what I thought it was.
And I want people to think about it differently. I want people to think about it as correcting a brain metabolism problem. The reason is not because I am against stimulants. It's not because I'm against effective therapies and treatments. If somebody is taking a stimulant and it is working well for them, by all means, keep doing it. I am all about improving human health, human happiness, human productivity. I am all for it. However, if you understand that this is a metabolic intervention, it gives us additional strategies and options because there are other ways to improve brain metabolism other than stimulant medications. And not everybody does well with stimulants. Some people have bad side effects. Some people can kind of crash and burn toward the end of the day in terms of mood or energy level. For some, that's not a problem, but for others, it's a major problem, and they seriously are crashing every night. For some people, stimulants disrupt their sleep. Even when they only take them in the morning, the kids aren't sleeping well, and now that's wreaking all sorts of havoc. And if you don't sleep well, guess what? That's going to further disrupt your brain metabolism. And
plus a lot of them impact your appetite.
Yes.
And so if you're not actually fueling your body, that also impacts your brain metabolism and the metabolism in your body. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can see my reaction, which is basically my jaw is kind of hanging open because I'm in real time thinking about so many things. Like as a mom, I'm thinking back to the fact that our son, Oakley, was a profoundly picky eater. And if I am being honest with you, Dr. Palmer, I fed that kid chicken nuggets 3 meals a day because it was the only thing that I could get into that kid's mouth. He hated the texture of peanut butter. I tried to sneak crap into the smoothies. And so now I'm sitting here going, oh God, I gave my kid ADHD because I fed him processed crap. And he was not a sports kid and he played a lot of video games and I did this to him. And then I tried to medicate him and they told us you had to have 3 or 4 different types of medication. And I watched him turn into the Hulk when they put him on Vyvanse. And then I watched him drop off the Adderall cliff at the end of the day. And I saw our 12-year-old literally, like I'm going to start crying when I think about this. Like I literally saw like the light going out in him. And thankfully, he's like, I'm not taking this. I'm just not taking this because the only thing that was being offered to us is to keep him in school. You have to medicate him to have him sit still. And it was awful. And you're here to say there's something else you can do? What else can you do?
There are so many things we can do. And I mean, hearing your story and your son's story, it's heartbreaking because I know there are hundreds of thousands of other people, if not millions of other people just like that. There are so many parents who are being told you must medicate your child in order to keep him in school. He is a problem.
I said that to him too. I was like, you have to take this. Like, it's not an option for you.
The heartbreaking thing is that kids internalize the message that they are a problem. They're not getting the message that there is a problem with your brain metabolism, honey, and this is something we can address. It's not your fault. Your brain metabolism isn't working right.
Mm-hmm.
And the evidence for that is your inability to sit still and pay attention and do all these other things. And we can fix this.
So let's talk about your 5-day gut reset protocol.
Hey.
What are we doing,
All
Dr.
right,
Shaw?
so every day we're doing the 3 Fs. Okay. So every morning you're going to wake up no matter what, whether you're doing the gut reset protocol or not. Every day you're going to do the fasting, the fitness, and the fiber fermented foods. That's goes without saying.
Okay.
When you start on the 5-day reset, the first day, in addition to what you've already done in the morning, you're going to add exercise. And it's the first E of the 4 different E's that we're going to be doing. And the last day, we're going to add all of the E's together. So it's like,
okay,
exercise is the first E. Okay. And exercise, for all the reasons we already talked about, your gut bacteria get happy. It's the best probiotic that you could ever do. And when you start moving your body, all of that distension starts to move, because whether it's fluid, whether it's a food baby, whether it's, stool in there, whether it's,
just a lifetime of chronic overeating and making terrible choices, or doing keg stands, or going to 17 weddings this summer. Regardless of how you're coming to the table, you're welcome. And we're going to start this protocol by adding in exercise. And does it matter what exercise you do during the 5-day reset?
No, it doesn't matter. Just move your body, because let's be honest, any kind of exercise is good exercise. Now, if you want to add in yoga because you get the twisting, amazing, because we know that physically twisting your gut is going to help release some of that gas and some of that fluid retention and get things moving. So I love things like yoga to add when you're exercising, but more walking. So say you walked in the morning, walk in the evening. Again, weight training, as you know, and I know, we lose about 1 to 3% of muscle mass each decade as women. And during menopause, that speeds up to almost double. And so getting that body moving, lifting weights. Okay. So exercise is number 1.
Okay. Day 2.
Day 2, eliminate, E. So the second E is eliminate. So what that means is that food elimination diet we talked about, you're going to start doing that. So take out dairy, gluten, white sugar, whatever you think may be triggering. So for some people that could be nuts. For some people that can be shellfish. Some people it can be corn. But usually it's gluten, dairy, and sugar. If you're not sure, just take those 3 out. Okay. That's eliminate. That's day 2.
Okay. Day 3.
Day 3, you're going to start eating foods your gut bacteria loves. The stuff we've already talked about, the things that are going to help your body, recover from this crazy thing that you put your gut through. So it's going to be that spinach, that asparagus. It's going to be that fruit, that bromelain from that pineapple, that papaya that has a digestive enzymes in there that help you digest it. So you're going to add foods back that your gut bacteria love. So yogurt is another one.
I have a question.
Yeah.
What protein is better for your gut than other in terms of like types of meat or fish or beans or lentils? Like, what is the kindest protein to make for a happy gut?
So if you're not plant-based, then egg protein is nicely digested by a lot of people. Doing an egg scramble or doing fish is a good way to get your protein. But if you're plant-based, then you could do beans, but make sure they're soaked, like black beans soaked are really gentle on their stomach. Whereas certain beans that if you don't soak them, they can be gas producing. Tofu is a nice thing to eat when you're trying to get that. And of course, like I said, yogurt, probiotic yogurt and cottage cheese are awesome ways to get that protein. That's not necessarily meat, but it's a dairy-based high protein food that you can have. And then, of course, nuts. Although nuts aren't necessarily the biggest source of protein, they do have some protein in them. And so having that protein, but protein in general is a great, great way to keep your gut bacteria happy and satisfied as well. So that's a really your gut loves protein. What it doesn't love is fake protein. Do you know what I mean? Like those shakes,
fake
and
meats
bars and fake meats and like all the fake stuff. Like when you have a protein shake, I don't know about you, but I immediately get bloated.
Yes,
my body
pretty
does
much.
not like processed protein. So the shakes and the bars, and we all are busy. I eat protein bars and shakes like we have to. It's part of our busy lives. But when you're trying to reset, try to have the protein in its whole form, because that's going to be the kindest thing that you can do to your body. You don't want to exacerbate the issue.
Now, I noticed you didn't say locally raised meats, chicken, lamb. Would you not want to eat meat during this 5-day period?
You know, the studies on meat have become very controversial, as you know. Okay. But a new study came out, and this is becoming a really big thought. It's that we used to think that meat in general was very inflammatory and that your gut was very inflamed with meat. But there's new data that show that maybe it's not necessarily the meat itself. Maybe it's the type of meat that you're eating. Like, is it fast food meat versus meat? So the meat story remains to be pieced out. But if you're eating something that's super healthy, locally raised, not full of antibiotics, not from, your local fast food place, this is going to be a nice source of protein. And as I said, our biggest goal is to make that gut bacteria happy. And although fiber and fermented is the number one goal, we said protein is also the goal. And so getting that, but it's a very nuanced conversation, because you basically could argue still the bulk of the research still shows that red meat, or especially processed red meat, is probably inflammatory to the gut and causes all kinds of issues. But things are changing. So I would say it's like a complicated answer. If you enjoy it, it's doing good for your body, you're feeling healthy, that's a great thing to add to your diet.
Okay, I just want to recap for everybody. So the 5-day reset, one of the things that you're doing is Dr. Amy Shaw's morning routine, which are the 3 Fs. And so you're going to do this every morning, which is the 12-hour fast before you have your first meal. It is the fitness, and then it is a breakfast that includes some sort of fibrous and fermented food, because that makes your gut bacteria happy. Day 1, you're going to add in exercise, meaning in addition to the fitness walk in the morning, you're going to add in a little yoga, a little something else. Day 2, you're going to start an elimination of dairy, gluten, and white sugar. Day 3, you're going to be adding in and eating the kind of food that your gut bacteria loves, which we're learning all about. And what is the E that we add in on day 4, Dr.
I
Shaw?
love this E, because you're going to love it too. The E is for enjoy. So when we're in our stressed and opposite of enjoyment, right, is when you're stressed and anxious, you can't digest and you can't heal from what's just happened to your body. And a lot of people, they come back from a vacation or holidays and they're so stressed, and they're punishing themselves by doing all these crazy diets and cleanses and exercises, and it's making things worse. You actually need to go back and spend time with people who are good for your mental health, because they're also good for your gut health. Okay. These gut bacteria, just like we said, we want to make them happy. They are super happy when you're spending time with people who make you feel your best. And it's so crazy to think, but they love bonding. Bonding is a love language for your gut bacteria. They love it. So you want to enjoy yourself. So it's spending time with people you love. It's dancing. It's, doing something that lights your brain, body on fire. That's like, you're so passionate about. Enjoyment is like one of the things that people don't realize that can be so healing to our body, not just our gut, but our entire body.
Got it. Okay. What do we do day 5?
We're putting it all together. We're
All right,
doing
tell me what that means.
all of these. So in the morning, you're waking up, you're checking if you fasted for 12 hours, wait 12 hours before you eat your first meal. Then you're going for your fitness right after that. Then you're coming back and you're like, oh, time to eat. You're going to have, a big scramble with veggies, yogurt, and berries on the side. And you're going to have your ginger tea because you're trying to eat the foods that are great for your body. So high protein, high fiber, fermented food breakfast. And then you are going to maybe go for a yoga class or do some stretching or exercises again later in the day. That is going to help you. You're going to be on this elimination diet journey. It's not one day. You're not going to know what things you're sensitive to. Our gut microbiome maybe doesn't even respond for a few days. You'll have to do this, extend this for as many as 3 weeks for some people to really find out what their true food sensitivities, but at least 1 week you want to be doing the elimination. And then you want to eat foods all day that your body loves. Like, this is not the time to maybe have your artificially sweetened, snacks and chips and crackers and fast food. This is time to eat really healthy whole foods. Maybe you'll have a spinach salad and you'll have a bowl of fruit on the side. These are that's your eat. And then do something, bond with someone. Go out for a walk with a friend. Go have coffee with someone that you haven't seen in a long time, a mentor, a friend, a colleague, your loved one. Spend time with your dog, your baby. Do something you love. Maybe you're doing some creative writing, and that is like the perfect day at the very end. And that's like, if you did all the things and you put it all into one day, that would be the day.
Now, how long do I have to do this before I'm going to start to feel like the bloating is going down and my gut bacteria is happy and healthy again?
I'm so excited to tell you this because there's actually research behind this. It's as little as 3 days. 3 days. You could start feeling on day 3, you could start feeling like, wow, you know what? My mood is better. My bloating feels better. My cravings are gone. And then after, it keeps going. It just starts at 3 days, but in 2 weeks, you should be markedly better. So I love saying 3 days because to me, 3 days feels so doable and it's backed by science. We saw a study where they took people and they rapidly changed their diet. And they said, okay, we're going to rapidly change your diet from a fast food, crazy processed diet to the super healthy gut loving diet. And we're going to see how long it takes for your gut microbiome to completely transform. And they expected 2 weeks and they saw it in 3 days.
I'm so happy you said that because this conversation is going to release during the holidays. And I don't know about you listening, but I freaking love the holiday food. And particularly here in the U.S., the Thanksgiving fare, I have 4 or 5 helpings of the turkey with the stuffing and the mashed potato and this cranberry jello thing that we've always made in my family. And I just love it. And then I love the leftovers. And I think what happens for me is I do feel like I have a food baby and I feel discouraged. And so I do these extreme things. And then they don't really work. And then I feel more discouraged. And so hearing that you can leverage science and you can follow this reset and you can understand the greater context of this. And if you simply stick with it for these 3 to 5 days, you'll likely start to feel better because you're using the science of all of this. That makes me feel more motivated, honestly. Because
me too.
Because I felt after this week where the pants started out fitting at the beginning of the week. And at the end of the week, I kid you not, I could not even button these pants. And the pictures, I do look like I am in my second trimester of a pregnancy in these pants. And I felt like I was. And so I felt really discouraged because I thought, what is going on? Is this menopause? Is it stress? Is it travel? Is it, what is it? It's probably all of those things. Mm-hmm. But I now feel very empowered because this is something I can do. And when you tell me that there is research that says within 3 days, the studies show that you'll start to feel better if you follow this. Obviously, I can't, be downing a bottle of Jim Beam on top of this, or, I got to really pay attention to all the things that you're talking about. Can't be taking Advil first thing in the morning while I'm doing my fast. This makes sense to me. One thing that you didn't mention was taking a probiotic.
Yeah.
Do you recommend that people take probiotics? Like, and I realize that not all probiotics are created equally, but does taking a probiotic help if you're bloated?
Yeah. I mean, okay, this is how I would think of it. In our species in our gut is like the Amazon jungle. There's like thousands of different, hundreds, if not thousands of different species in there. And
of
when
probiotics?
Of bacteria. Yeah. So a probiotic.
Is probiotic the same thing as a bacteria?
Yeah. So it's
okay.
A probiotic is a bacteria that you take by mouth, right? So
okay.
A probiotic might have, say, hundreds of strains, right? But that's not even close to how many different types of bacteria are in your gut. So what the problem with probiotics today is that if you threw seeds from a plane into a barren land, right? You just threw them, not knowing what climate you were in, not knowing what the local kind of weather, soil was like. Some seedlings may come out of it, if you got lucky, but you don't know what you're doing. You're just throwing things at the wall and hoping something sticks, right? So the difference is when you eat probiotic foods like yogurt, like cottage cheese, like kimchi and sauerkraut, the bacteria come in a food matrix and they're delivered to your bacteria that already live there. Like, hey, look, I brought you some friends. And then for some reason, our body is just more likely to incorporate those guys into our existing ecosystem than they are when you throw a whole bunch of pills into your body.
That makes a lot of sense. Hey, it's Mel. Thank you so much for being here. If you enjoyed that video, by God, please subscribe because I don't want you to miss a thing. Thank you so much for being here. We've got so much amazing stuff coming. Thank you so much for sending this stuff to your friends and your family. I love you. We create these videos for you. So make sure you subscribe. Mwah.